Hi. Hello, everybody. How's everybody? Wearing my shawl, my homemade shawl from Judy Mitchell. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea, daily short story program for adult listeners, brought to you by the Island Free Library. The Island Free Library is the public library on Block Island. I am the director of that library. My name is Kristen, and I welcome you to this short story program. During the month of February, we are celebrating Black History Month with short story selections from American Black authors. We are also celebrating Black History Month at this library through our Facebook page, where we have our colleague posting a Black poet daily on that Facebook page, and she is curating a beautiful contribution to Black History Month, and I encourage everyone to check that out. I loved today's post. I read it and commented to her like, whoa, he's heavy. He's in, I think I said intense, and she's like, yeah, heavy. Or maybe I said that was heavy and she said intense. One of those. We one of us said heavy, the other said intense, whichever way that went. Definitely worth looking at. It's a beautiful, beautiful collection of poets and poetry and writing that she has put together in celebration of Black poets. I am doing the same for Black authors and short stories. I've been reading a lot from this book, Black American Short Stories, A Century of the Best. And it was originally published in 1966, so that's, half a century ago or something like that already, maybe more than that. No, about half a century, I think. But, and I always on this program, if I come across Niggger, I don't say it out loud. I stumble along, I make up a word, I sort of start to say it, then don't, exaggerate the N of it. And I told you I would do a little research on that, and I did, and I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. It is a word that has power to it. And obviously we know this, and I don't need to say it. I don't need to reinforce the power that I have when I say it as a white woman. And it's a different power it takes on for people of color to use it and Black people to use it. That is a positive power. And so that's a choice that I'm going to make for today, probably consistently, but for today. And so lucky me, I found a story that I don't have to edit or flub or, try to figure out what I'm going to do. That word isn't used. So that's the story I'm going with today. There is a great short story in here that I want to read, and it uses that word often. In fact, the novel that I just read uses it often. But again, that writer is a Black male American voice. And so that's his power to claim that word and have a positive connotation. But I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get through the short story that I want to read on this, because again, you've heard me say, I don't really want to edit, someone famous's writing, right? That's not my job. I'm not going to edit that. So we'll see what happens. But as I dug into that online, just a little bit of online research, quite controversial how that comes across. And so I'm avoiding it today in a good way, right? I'm not avoiding. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to read a story where it's not in there. That kind of avoid. It's not avoiding the subject or talking about it or the issue, just the word for today. Which also has things that it says about online, like, just because I avoid it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And what really stuck with me is just because I don't say it or use it and I'm avoiding it doesn't mean racism doesn't still exist. We know that's true. So for today, I'm reading Solo on the Drums by Anne Petrie. Yeah, that's right, Dad. Yeah, in a positive way. I'll send you. I'll send you some links, Dad, about that. Okay, so for today, Dad, this one is for you, me, and Uncle Jeff. Maybe not for Uncle Jeff because it doesn't have some great. It's not not a positive story, but it's definitely about a drummer. So here we go. Solo on the drums. And Petry or Petry, Petry. Let's see when it was originally published. Let's look at it. What am I doing? Solo on the drums. Where is it? Solo on the drums. Oh, Solo on the drums. Copyright 1947 by 47 Magazine of the Year. Reprinted by permission of Russell and Vulcaning, Inc. So copyright 1947. Wow, you were a kid, Dad. Copyright 1947. Okay, here we go. Solo on the drums. The orchestra had a week's engagement at the Randlert Theater at Broadway and 42nd Street. His name was picked out in lights on the marquee, the name of the orchestra, and then his name underneath by itself. There had been a time when he would have been excited by it and stopped to let his mind and his eyes linger over it lovingly. Kid Jones. The name, his name, up there in lights that danced and winked in the brassy sunlight. And at night, his name glittered up there on the marquee as though it had been sprinkled with diamonds. The people who pushed their way through the crowded street looked up at it and recognized it and smiled. He used to eat it up, but not today. Not after what happened this morning. He just looked at the sign with his name on it. There it was. Then he noticed that the sun had come out and he shrugged. And he went on inside the theater to put on one of those cream-colored suits and get his music together. After he finished changing his clothes, he glanced in the long mirror in the dressing room. He hadn't changed any. Same face, no fatter and no thinner. No gray hair, nothing. He frowned because he felt that the things that were eating him up inside ought to show, but they didn't. When it was time to go out on the stage, he took his place behind the drums, not talking, just sitting there. The orchestra started playing softly. He made a mental note of the fact that the boys were working together as smoothly as though each one had been oiled. The long gray curtains parted. One moment they were closed, and then they were open, silently, almost like magic. The high-powered spots flooded the stage with light. He could see the specks of dust gliding down the wide beams of light. Under the bands of light, the great space out front was all shadow. Faces slowly emerged out of it, disembodied, heads and shoulders that slanted up and back, almost to the roof. He hit the drums lightly, regularly, a soft, barely discernible rhythm, a background. He repeated emphasis for the horns and the piano and the violin. The man with the trumpet stood up, and the first notes came out sweet and clear and high. Kid Jones kept up the drum accompaniment. Slow, careful, soft. And he felt his left eyebrow lift itself and start to twitch as the man played the trumpet. It happened whenever he heard the trumpet. The notes crept up higher, 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 so high that his stomach sucked in against itself, then a little lower and stronger, a sound sustained, the rhythm of it beating against his ears until he was filled with it and sighing with it. He wanted to cover his ears with his hands because he kept hearing a voice that whispered the same thing over and over again. The voice was trapped somewhere under the roof, caught and held there by the trumpet. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. The sound took him straight back to the rain that had come with the morning. He could see the beginning of the day, raw and cold. He was at home, but he was warm because he was close to her, holding her in his arms. The rain and the wind cried softly outside the window. And now, well, he felt as though he were floating up and up and up on that long blue note of the trumpet. He half closed his eyes and rode up on it. It had stopped being music. It was that whispering voice making him shiver, hating it and not being able to do anything about it. I'm leaving. It's the guy who plays the piano I'm in love with, and I'm leaving now, today. Rain in the streets, heat gone, food gone, everything gone because a woman's gone. It's everything you ever wanted, he thought. It's everything you never got. Everything you ever had, everything you ever lost. It's all there in the trumpet, pain and hate and trouble and peace and quiet and love. The last note stayed up in the ceiling, hanging on and on. The man with the trumpet had stopped playing, but Kid Jones could still hear that last note in his ears, in his mind. The spotlight shifted and landed on Kid Jones, the man behind the drums. The long beam of white light struck the top of his head and turned him into a pattern of light and shadow. Because of the cream-colored suit and shirt, his body seemed to be encased in light. But there was a shadow over his face, so that his features blended and disappeared, his hairline receding so far back that he looked like a man with a face that never ended, a man with a high, long face and dark, dark skin. He caressed the drums with the brushes in his hands. They responded with a whisper of sound. The rhythm came over, but it had to be listened for. It stayed that way for a long time, low, insidious, repeated. Then he made the big bass drum growl and pick up the same rhythm. The Marquis of Brund, pianist with the band, turned to the piano. The drums and the piano talked the same rhythm, the piano high, a little more insistent than the drums. The Marquis was turned sideways on the piano bench. His left foot tapped out the rhythm. His cream-colored suit sharply outlined the bulkiness of his body against the dark gleam of the piano. The drummer and the pianist were silhouetted in two separate brilliant shafts of light. The drums slowly dominated the piano. The rhythm changed. It was faster. Kid Jones looked out over the crowded theater as he hit the drums. He began to feel as though he were the drums and the drums were he. The theater throbbed with the excitement of the drums. A man sitting near the front shivered and his head jerked to the rhythm. A sailor put his arm around the girl sitting beside him, took his hand and held her face still and pressed his mouth close over hers. Close, 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 until their faces seemed to melt together. Her hat fell off and neither of them moved. His hand dug deep into her shoulder and still they didn't move. A kid sneaked in through a side door and slid into an aisle seat. His mouth was wide open and he clutched his cap with both hands, tight and hard against his chest as he listened. The drummer forgot he was in the theater. There was only he and the drums, and they were far away, long gone. He was holding Lulu, Helen, Susie, Mamie close in his arms. And all of them, all those girls, blended into that one girl who was his wife, the one who said, "I'm leaving." She said it over and over again this morning while the rain dripped down the window panes. When he hit the drums again, it was with the thought that he was fighting with the piano player. He was choking the Marquis of Brund. He was putting a knife in clean between his ribs. He was slitting his throat with a long, straight blade. Take my woman, take your life. The drums leaped with the fury that was in him. The men in the band turned their heads toward him. A faint astonishment showed in their faces. He ignored them. The drums took him away from them, took him back and back and back, in time and space. He built up an illusion. He was sending out the news. Grandma died. The foreigner in the litter has an old disease and will not recover. The man from across the big water is sleeping with the chief's daughter. Kill, kill, kill. The war goes well with the men with the bad smell and the loud laugh. It goes badly with the chiefs with the round heads and the peacock's walk. It is cool in the deep track in the forest, cool and quiet. The trees talk softly. They speak of the dance tonight. The young girl from across the lake will be there. Her waist is slender and her thighs are rounded. Then the words he wanted to forget were all around Kid Jones again. I'm leaving, I'm leaving, I'm leaving. He couldn't help himself. He stopped, hitting the drums, and stared at the Marquis of Brund. A long, malevolent look, filled with hate. There was a restless, uneasy movement in the theater. He remembered where he was. He started playing again. The horn played a phrase, soft and short. The drums answered. The horn said the same thing all over again. The drums repeated it. The next time, it was more intricate. The phrase was turned around. It went back and forth and up and down. And the drums said it over, exactly the same. He knew a moment of panic. This was where he had to solo again, and he wasn't sure he could do it. He touched the drums lightly. They quivered and answered him. And then it was almost as though the drums were talking about his own life, the woman in Chicago who hated him, the girl with the round, soft body who had been his wife and who had walked out on him this morning in the rain. The old woman who was his mother, the same woman who lived in Chicago and who hated him because he looked like his father who had seduced her and left her years ago. He forgot the theater, forgot everything but the drums. He was welded to the drums, sucked inside them, all of him. His pulse beat. His heart beat. He had become part of the drums. They had become part of him. He made the big bass rumble and reverberate. He went a little mad on the big bass. Again and again, he filled the theater with a sound like thunder. The sound seemed to come not from the drums, but from deep inside himself. It was a sound that was being wrenched out of him, a violent, raging, roaring sound. As it issued from him, he thought, this is the story of my love. This is the story of my hate. This is all there is left of me. And the sound echoed and re-echoed far up under the roof of the theater. When he finally stopped playing, he was trembling. His body was wet with sweat. He was surprised to see that the drums were sitting there in front of him. He hadn't become a part of them. He was still himself, Kid Jones, master of the drums, greatest drummer in the world, selling himself a little piece at a time, every afternoon, twice every evening. Only this time he had topped all his other performances. This time, playing like this after what happened in the morning, he had sold all of himself, not just a little piece. Someone kicked his foot. Bow, you ape. What's the matter with you? He bowed from the waist, and the spotlight slid away from him down his pants leg. The light landed on the Marquis of Brund, the piano player. The Marquis's skin glistened like a piece of black seaweed. Then the light was back on Kid Jones. He felt hot, and he thought, I stink of sweat. The talcum he had dabbed on his face after he shaved felt like a constricting layer of cement. A thin layer, but definitely cement. No air could get through to his skin. He reached for his handkerchief and felt the powder and the sweat mix as he mopped his face. Then he bowed again and again, like one of those things you pull the string and it jerks, goes through the motion of dancing. Pull it again and it kicks. Yeah, he thought, you were hot, all right. The jitterbugs ate you up and you haven't any place to go. Since this morning, you haven't had any place to go. I'm leaving. It's the guy who plays the piano I'm in love with, the Marquis of Brund. He plays such sweet piano. I'm leaving, leaving, leaving. He stared at the Marquis of Brund for a long moment. Then he stood up and bowed again and again. Solo on the drums by Anne Petrie, possibly pronounced Petrie. I think Petrie. Couple of great stories from this book. Lots, actually, quite a few great stories from this book. That's been fun. I hope you enjoyed. Not sure where we'll go tomorrow, but I'll try to make the best pick I can. Have a great afternoon. It's sunny. You can see the sun shining on me in here. I hope to get out of here and by 5 and get outside in that sunshine. I hope you do too. Remember our list. Eat right, sleep right, take a shower, move your body, talk to someone you love, get some fresh air, think kind thoughts about yourself and others. Keep your mental health positive, your physical health sturdy. All times, but especially as this pandemic continues to, wear down on us a little. There is light at the end of the tunnel. In the tunnel, there is light. Stay well. Okay, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Thanks so much for coming. I put a note in the comments section of our Facebook page of a little bit about this story that we just read. So if you want to check that out, please do. Okay, peace.